Good afternoon, everyone, and we're so excited to welcome you to the 2024 Most Endangered Historic Places in Illinois announcement. We're just going to take a moment to ensure everybody can get into the room, give them a little moment here. So just hang tight. We will start in 1 minute. But again, we're so excited to have you here for Landmarks Illinois' announcement, and we look forward to your questions at the end. So we're going to wait just one more moment. Just to tell you while you're waiting, I hope that you'll go to our website, which is landmarks with an S, landmarks.org, to read more about what you're going to hear about today, as well as our vast number of programs. We have a wonderful frequently asked questions page. If you're new to preservation, everyone, we have our e-blast where you can stay up to date. So just to say that today, if this is your beginning, we're so excited to have you. And again, everyone, we're going to get started in just a moment. We're letting everybody in. We have a great crowd today. Thank you so much for your support, for signing up. And we're about to tell you about these really exciting preservation opportunities today. So I have two after, so I think it's time to get started, everyone. And good afternoon again. Thank you for joining us for the 2024 Most Endangered Historic Places in Illinois announcement. I'm Bonnie McDonald, the President and CEO of Landmarks Illinois, and I want to welcome our members, the press who are joining us today. Thank you so much, as well as our Landmarks Illinois members, our supporters, and our preservation advocates. Just a reminder that this presentation is being recorded and it is going to be posted later to the Landmarks Illinois YouTube page. So please share the recording with your friends and your colleagues if they could not make it this afternoon. Closed captioning is available for today's presentation. To enable this feature, all you have to do is click on the Show Captions button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And as I was mentioning as you came in, if this is your first introduction to us at Landmarks Illinois, I sincerely welcome you. Thank you for being here. Landmarks Illinois is a nonprofit organization that was formed in 1971 to help support historic preservation in Chicago, in its suburbs, and across the state of Illinois. And we provide resources that people need to save important places in their communities. Those resources include advocacy assistance, grants and loan programs, professional pro bono advice, and public policy, and more. Again, check our website for all of the things that we offer. Our advocacy assistance also includes our longest running and most impactful advocacy program, this annual list of the most endangered historic places in Illinois, which launched in 1995. Every year, the Most Endangered list calls attention to culturally, historically, and architecturally significant places all across the state. And over the program's nearly 30-year history, we have listed more than 300 sites, many of which have been preserved, rehabilitated, and reused. So, as I said, visit our website, landmarks.org, to learn more about the Most Endangered program and the outcome of the many listed sites. The website also includes all of the information that I'm announcing today and more detail about each 2024 Most Endangered site. Now, members of the media can reach out to Caitlin McAvoy, our Director of Communications, for more information. Her contact information was included on the media release, and it is also up on the screen now. Now, audience members, you will have the opportunity to ask questions of our advocacy staff managers who manage this program after I conclude today's announcement. So keep those questions in mind. You can put them in later into our chat and we'll be happy to answer them. Now, Landmarks Illinois also wants to acknowledge that our endangered sites are located on the ancestral land that was and still is home to several Indigenous people and Native American tribes. Through unscrupulous and violent practices, the United States government forced the removal of Native Americans from what is now Illinois, and it opened lands to American settlers. We want to acknowledge the full history of the places you're about to hear about. We want our community to know that just last month, the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation became the first federally recognized tribal nation in Illinois, and it regained sovereignty over portions of its homeland. And Governor J.B. Pritzker also signed 3 laws in August of 2023 that offered expanded protections for Native and Indigenous Illinoisans. You can find out more about those laws on the Illinois Department of Natural Resources website. And now, I'm proud to announce our Landmarks Illinois 2024 Most Endangered Historic Places in Illinois. The first site of our 2024 list is the Sears Administration Building in Chicago's North Lawndale neighborhood. The large 5-story building is part of a sprawling former Sears, Roebuck and Company campus on the west side. The campus was constructed in 1905 and led by Sears's president, Julius Rosenwald, who was also known for his founding of the Museum of Science and Industry and for his campaign to build schools for African American students across the rural American South. And by the 1960s, Sears had become the largest retailer in the world, having grown for decades selling low-cost merchandise through its catalog service to rural communities without retail store access. Now, at its peak, the company employed nearly 22,000 people. A couple thousand of these employees worked in the administration building, which housed the company's headquarters offices. And the administration building and the entire company campus are part of the Sears, Roebuck and Company Chicago Landmark District. It is also listed as a National Historic Landmark. Despite the campus's rich history, today the administration building is vacant and underutilized. It also went up for sale in 2023 by the development venture that owns it, leaving its future uncertain. Other buildings that were part of the former Sears campus have been successfully rehabilitated and reused. The Sears Powerhouse, which is pictured left, has been transformed into an educational facility. The former catalog building today is an affordable housing complex called the Lofts on Arthington by Mercy Housing Lakefront, which you see pictured right. And both of these adaptive reuses are award-winning projects, having been honored with Landmarks Illinois' Richard H. Driehaus Foundation Preservation Awards. We have also financially supported preservation work at the Sears Sunken Garden on the campus through our Preservation Heritage Fund grant. We believe rehabilitation and reuse of the administration building is possible. Its location also makes such a project open to financial incentives like federal and state historic preservation tax credits and tax increment financing, otherwise known as TIF funds. Now, Kevin Sutton, the executive director of the Foundation for Home and Square, which is actively working to preserve the administration building, had this to say, quote, "The North Lawndale community has worked extremely hard to change perceptions and the realities in our neighborhood. Most of the buildings in the historic Sears complex have been rehabilitated and reused. The destructive deterioration that jeopardizes the Sears administration building threatens the success of these projects and raises significant safety and security concerns among community stakeholders," end quote. Now, if you know of a preservation-minded potential buyer, please have them contact SVN Chicago Commercial for information about the property. Our next site is another large-scale and highly prominent building in its community. As you will see, this is a theme for a handful of places on this year's Most Endangered list. It is the Libby, McNeil, and Libby building in Blue Island. From 1918 to 1968, it served as a canning and bottling factory for Libby, McNeil, and Libby Company. Now, at the time when the factory was constructed, the Libby, McNeil, and Libby Company was the second largest producer of canned foods in the country and became a major employer in the area. And today, the building is a reminder of Blue Island's industrial past, the beating heart of the community for decades. The former factory has sat empty on and off for decades, and today it remains empty and it is beginning to decay. In 2018, the building was donated to the nonprofit Affordable Recovery Housing. The organization had plans to reuse the space, but code and zoning violations and permitting requirements have stalled the project. Now, however, reuse of this former factory is possible. There have been many examples of industrial buildings that have been reused across this state. Take the Cooperage 214 in Peoria, which is another award-winning preservation project that took a former whiskey barrel production factory and transformed it into office space and apartments. Now, up the road from the Libby building, a former Blue Island Masonic Lodge has been converted into offices and a health center. The Libby building presents similar opportunities for adaptive reuse. And again, like the Sears administration building, A number of financial resources are available, like local TIF funds, that would support the rehabilitation. Now, Kevin Brown, vice president of the Calumet Heritage Partnership, which is working to preserve the factory, said this, quote, "The presence of unique heritage assets, such as the Libby, McNeil, and Libby building, connects communities like Blue Island to their past. And it presents attractive centers where community and economic development can occur if they're repurposed for the future," end quote. To express your support for the preservation of the Libby, McNeil, and Libby building, contact the Calumet Heritage Partnership. Our next 2024 Most Endangered Site is yet another large-scale, prominent building that is a great candidate for adaptive reuse, and that is the former Collinsville Township High School in Collinsville. The former high school welcomed generations of students between 1908 and 1982. Classes were moved to another nearby high school called the Greenwood campus in the 1970s and early 1980s, which left Collinsville Township High School empty. And in the decades since that early 1980s, the school has been used as a private academy and then for storage. But today, it is empty. The former school remains a prime reuse candidate. It is centrally located in Collinsville, which is a community in Metro East, the Illinois side of the St. Louis metro area. It is close to transportation, to shopping, and to employment. Now, the school was purchased by Celadon Collinsville GP LLC, which is an award-winning preservation developer, which has plans to develop the building into affordable housing. Now, while financing is often a challenge for preservation, many of the projects we've mentioned in the most endangered list, this is not the case for the former Collinsville High School. The owner has already identified funding and tax incentives for the project. The current obstacle to this project moving forward is that some local elected officials object to reusing the building as affordable housing. We believe if Collinsville will not support the reuse plan as presented, then local officials should work with the owner to identify alternative uses so that the vacant school doesn't continue to blight the surrounding residential neighborhood. Now, Scott Henry, CEO of Celadon Partners, which owns the building, said this, quote, "There needs to be more open dialogue between municipalities and housing advocates to discuss and work through concerns around affordable housing. Doing so will not only promote understanding, it will pave the way to save more of the state's treasured historic buildings while also creating more desperately needed housing for Illinois' workforce," end quote. Now, here is how you can voice your support for the reuse of the former Collinsville Township High School. Email project developer, Scott Henry, and contact Collinsville Mayor Jeff Stamen and Collinsville Community Development Director Travis Taylor, again, to voice your support for reuse. Our next 2024 Most Endangered Historic Site is another school building, the former Lincoln School in East St. Louis. Lincoln School opened in 1886 as a response to Black advocates petitioning for appropriate and equal educational opportunities in the Southern Illinois city. The building remained open for nearly 90 years. It served as a school until 1949 and then as the school district offices until 1975. But the former Lincoln School is vacant and it's deteriorating. Without a new use and proper investment and required maintenance, the school will eventually become another victim of demolition by neglect that threatens many buildings in East St. Louis. The place is too important to the local community and too culturally significant to let that happen. Though East St. Louis's population declined significantly throughout the mid-20th century and widespread demolition followed, this storied building still stands. It remained standing during the 1917 East St. Louis race riots, which left well over 100 African Americans dead and caused property damage of more than $10 million in today's dollars. With East St. Louis's downtown historic district just a block away, the former Lincoln School stands as a prime location for use as a museum and a heritage site to tell stories from the past. Reginald Petty, who's the founder of the East St. Louis Historical Society, said this, quote, The old Lincoln School was the first school for colored students in East St. Louis, Illinois. This building stands as a symbol of our progress post-slavery and as a foundation for the great accomplishments of African Americans from East St. Louis, end quote. Mia King, president of the Emma L. Wilson King Foundation, attended the former Lincoln School with her 12 siblings, and she had this to say, quote, as members of a large African American family in East St. Louis, we share a common educational heritage rooted in the historic St. Louis Avenue structure. Despite the challenges of de facto segregated education in Illinois in the past, this school stands as a testament to the sacrifices made by our community. It boasted some of the most skilled educators and produced exceptional graduates. This building is deeply woven into the historical fabric of Illinois, end quote. For information about historic East St. Louis, or to join the local preservation effort, which we encourage you to do, please contact the East St. Louis Historical Society. The next 2024 Most Endangered site is also located in Southern Illinois. It is the Johnson County Courthouse in Vienna. Built in 1871, the Johnson County Courthouse has stood as an important local landmark in the center of town. It was also the oldest continually operating courthouse in Illinois until it closed in September of 2023. The courthouse was forced to close last fall after a roof truss fractured in the building. The county immediately vacated the building due to safety concerns, and temporary stabilization of the fractured truss has taken place, but a permanent solution is needed. A lack of funding is preventing critical repairs from moving forward. Johnson County has been building a new county complex, which is set to open this year. And even before the roof truss incident, the plans were to move county operations from the historic courthouse to the new facilities. The old courthouse was supposed to be repurposed, however, as business offices and as the home of the local historical society. I just want to say we commend the Johnson County officials and citizens for their intentions to reuse the historic courthouse and to honor its significance in the community. Yet, until proper maintenance work takes place, these plans cannot move forward. And meanwhile, the building remains empty and unused, putting its future in limbo. Brenda Kreuter, who is the chair of Revive Vienna, a local community development group, said this, quote, some buildings are more than buildings. They are historic cultural monuments. This grand old lady has stood with beauty, dignity, and pride since its beginning. Some of our ancestors stood with her then. She needs us to stand with her now, as she awaits some much needed and deserved repairs. Our beloved courthouse is a constant reminder of where we came from, and she should not be allowed to devolve into yet another lifeless building in our county, end quote. Here is how you can help save this courthouse. Johnson County Revitalization Corporation is leading local preservation efforts. So you can visit their website at jocorc.org. Again, JoCorc is JOCORC, stands for the Johnson County Revitalization Corporation.org, to learn more about the Save Our Courthouse initiative. Another beloved community anchor, also in need of maintenance, is the Decatur Masonic Temple, our next 2024 Most Endangered site. Designed in 1927 by renowned architects Holabird and Roche, the Masonic Temple has served as an important community center for Decatur and the greater Central Illinois region. A 1,000-person ballroom and 1,200-seat auditorium has hosted famed speakers including Eleanor Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy Jr., and Richard Nixon. However, the building is deteriorating. While the Masonic Temple still hosts community events, weddings, concerts, and other gatherings, it does not generate enough income to properly address rising building maintenance costs. Community members want to see the Masonic Temple revitalized, but funding to do so is badly needed. The building is located in Decatur's historic district, posing a unique opportunity for the Masonic Temple to house public events and displays that celebrate local history. New revenue-generating activities are needed. But with proper investment, the Masonic Temple can again become a thriving site for community building and for connection. Terry Howley, the former mayor of Decatur, had this to say. Quote, the successful preservation and repurposing of the historic Masonic Temple is an important project for Decatur. The reuse of the temple as a means of commemorating and celebrating Decatur's storied past will provide a uniquely suited space for many groups. It will foster collaboration and community spirit as originally intended by the builders in a modern context. I look forward to its redevelopment with great anticipation. End quote. The local historic group, History of the Heartland, is working to preserve the Masonic Temple. Please contact them to see how you can best support its mission to preserve Decatur's civic life. Another community anchor in need of a creative solution and financial support is our next 2024 Most Endangered site, the Portage Theater in Chicago. Built in 1920, the Portage Theater is a highly visible local landmark in the city's northwest side Portage Park neighborhood. It is architecturally noteworthy, and it served as an important cultural institution for decades. In fact, it operated continuously as a theater for 80 years. But between 2001 and 2018, it changed owners multiple times. It was rehabilitated and it reopened, but with inconsistent success. For the last 4 years, it has remained shuttered and empty, and deferred maintenance has taken a toll on the once bustling theater. The current owner has shown an interest in improving the theater, but has been unable to secure the financing required for the needed work. The long-term plan for the building is also not known. A rehabilitated Portage Theater has the potential to be an economic and a cultural anchor for Portage Park's Six Corners commercial area. Rehabilitation is a logical next step following recent investments in the neighborhood, which has seen a recent surge in businesses opening up. As a City of Chicago designated landmark, the Portage Theater is eligible to apply certain tax incentives and grant funds to the rehabilitation project. Pursuing a listing in the National Register of Historic Places could also make the theater eligible for further financial assistance. Amy Zander, managing director of the Six Corners Association, said this, quote, restoring the historic Portage Theater would be the icing on the cake amid a real estate resurgence in Six Corners. The theater served as an entertainment hub for the Northwest Side and with proper renovations could be reactivated to serve the community and boost the local economy, end quote. If you are interested in helping the revitalization of the Portage Theater, please contact the Six Corners Association, Six Corners Association. Our final three 2024 Most Endangered Places all have something in common. They are official state historic sites. Illinois' state historic sites are places that have been designated as significant to the state's history and deemed worthy of preservation and to be publicly accessible educational sites. And there are 56 state historic sites in Illinois. These include museums, monuments, and archaeological sites that give people the opportunity to learn about the history of Illinois if those sites are properly maintained and open. All of these sites are operated through the Historic Sites Division of the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, or IDNR. We have included 3 state historic sites on our 2024 Most Endangered list this year to call attention to the overall lack of resources provided to IDNR to properly maintain these important places. They are the Colony Church Building in Bishop Hill, the Buell House in Golconda, and Shawneetown Bank in Old Shawneetown. The problems that persist at these 3 places are not unique. Many state historic sites badly need maintenance work. However, we have identified these 3 as being the most endangered. Let's begin with the Bishop Hill Colony Church. The village of Bishop Hill in Western Illinois is one of the earliest settlements of Swedish immigrants in the United States. In addition to being a state historic site, the Bishop Hill settlement is also a National Historic Landmark. The Colony Church was constructed in 1848, and it's among the remaining original buildings in Bishop Hill. The Bishop Hill State Historic Site includes 4 state-owned buildings, all of which require maintenance work, but the Colony Church is the one in the worst shape. Now, amongst the needed repairs are a new roof, siding, and paint. The wood in the building is rotting and its gutters are failing. Its foundation needs to be repaired as well. Here are some more photos of the Bishop Hill Colony Church. Todd DeDecker, administrator of the Bishop Hill Heritage Association, said this, quote, Bishop Hill was started as a communal religious colony in 1846. The Colony Church was, and still is, the heart and soul of this community. It is the most historically significant building in the village. Its continued preservation is vital to preserving the history and legacy of the Bishop Hill colony, end quote. In a few moments, we will share solutions for each of the state historic sites on our most endangered list, how you can help these sites individually, and we will provide contact information for the local site advocates. But first, let me tell you more about our next endangered state historic site, the Alexander Buell House in Golconda. Built in 1840, the home sits along the Trail of Tears in Illinois, the most fatal stretch of the historic trail. The Trail of Tears was the forced migration of tens of thousands of Native Americans from the southeastern United States to territory west of the Mississippi River from approximately 1830 to 1850. After their forced removal, Cherokee people would pass the Buell House when they returned to visit their former homeland in the United States state of Georgia. The site should be used as an interpretive center to serve as a reminder of this dark episode in our nation's history, allowing us to reflect and educate ourselves and future generations. IDNR recently painted the exterior of the home, addressing some of the required maintenance. But as you can see on the screen, the painting shows how the building can be improved when maintenance is prioritized. While the painting was badly needed, several urgent repairs remain, including the roof replacement, foundation repair, and window restoration. The Pope County Historical Society has undertaken basic grounds maintenance, but it does not have the necessary resources to address larger issues. And Linda Parsons of the Pope County Historical Society said this to us, quote, the Buell House is history at risk of being lost without proper restoration. This historic structure, once a tourist attraction, is representative of the early history of Golconda and Southern Illinois. Designated a historic point of interest on the Trail of Tears, restoration would improve tourism and allow it to be open to the public for tours and education, end quote. The last state historic site on our list is the Shawneetown Bank in Old Shawneetown, which is located in southern Illinois on the Ohio River, right across the border of Illinois and Kentucky. Right along the border of Illinois and Kentucky. The building was constructed in 1841 and it opened as the Bank of Illinois. It is the oldest bank building in the entire state. The Bank of Illinois suspended operations in 1843, but the building housed numerous financial institutions from 1854 all the way to the 1930s. The old Shawneetown Bank was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1972, one of Illinois' early additions to the register. This is not the first time that we have called attention to the old Shawneetown Bank. Landmarks Illinois included it on our most endangered list back in 2009 due to the ongoing maintenance needs. And the building has further deteriorated since then, despite continued calls for the resources needed. And while there has been some investment in the building's exterior, the state has not been able to make any interior repairs. The building lacks mechanical systems, and roof leaks are allowing water inside the building, which is accelerating the degradation of the structure. As is the case with other state historic sites, budgetary concerns place this property in danger of continued neglect. Christy Short, a former Gallatin County Historical Society historian and curator, said this, quote, the old state bank at Shawneetown, situated at the spur's end of the Ohio River Scenic Byway, is unique and a part of our identity. For years, opportunities for generating revenue through tourism for our county and region have been overlooked. To nourish tourism in Southern Illinois is our biggest asset. Preservation of this historic bank offers opportunities. offers opportunities for investing in the goals we all share, seeing and touching our history firsthand, and enabling us to generate public awareness of our state's history, end quote. To properly preserve this site and all the state historic sites in Illinois, the solution is clear. IDNR must be provided with the financial and human resources necessary for the required maintenance of these sites it is responsible for managing. As a long-term solution, once emergency repairs are made at the sites, IDNR could partner with local organizations to help with ongoing maintenance. In Bishop Hill, there's the Bishop Hill Heritage Association, for example, that has already been longtime stewards of the historic site. In Golconda, the Pope County Historical Society has also dedicated resources to help maintain the Buell House. And the Gallatin County Historical Society is working to preserve the old Shawneetown Bank. In conversations with Landmarks Illinois, IDNR representatives have expressed a desire to properly maintain its state historic sites. It just needs the resources to do so. And here's how you can help. Contact IDNR to voice your support for preserving state-owned historic properties. You can also contact your state representative and senator to encourage them to prioritize additional funding in the budget for state historic sites within IDNR. On the screen now is information on local groups in Bishop Hill, Golconda, and Old Shawneetown working to preserve these places, and we thank them for doing that. Connect with them to learn more, and please lend a hand. Now, with those, this concludes our 2024 Most Endangered Historic Places in Illinois. I now want to open up our Q&A portion of today's announcement and encourage all members of our audience to participate. All your questions are welcome, everyone. And here to help answer your questions, I would like to welcome members of our advocacy team who were instrumental in developing this year's Most Endangered Historic Places. Let me introduce them. Quinn Adamowski is our Regional Advocacy Manager serving Greater Illinois, and Frank Butterfield, Chief Operating Officer who directs our advocacy team. Our Advocacy Manager, Kendra Parzan, is unable to join us today because she is on parental leave, but we want to acknowledge that Kendra was incredibly instrumental in putting this year's list together, and we wish she could be here today, but congratulate her. Now, Frank is here to answer questions about the Chicago sites in Kendra's Place, and Quinn is here to answer about the suburban communities in Chicago, the Chicago area. So everyone, let's get started. This is a great time for you to put your questions in the chat, and I am going to facilitate. So everyone, let's see what we have. Give me a moment to read through these. So we have a hello from some of our members, which we appreciate. Lois, hello. From Andy Pierce. Let's see if I can get to our question here. What is the first step? Essentially the Portage Theater. I know Andy's glad this is being listed as an advocate for theaters all across the city. He says, we are really hoping that the owner and city planners will take advantage of the expertise and tools that we offer so that they develop a plan for success. What is the first step? Who will begin the conversation with these vested interests? Frank, why don't I put that your way?
So much. Thank you, Bonnie, and thanks for the question about the Portage Theater. With all of these sites on the most endangered list, Landmarks Illinois really prioritizes having strong local partners and local community engagement. So I just want to, with the Portage Theater specifically, give a special recognition to the Six Corners Association as well as the Portage Park Chamber of Commerce. So we work together with them to come up with strategies to engage the owner. This is one with Most Endangered. We love the spotlight that this puts on an important place like the theater. Whether that can then be leveraged to have clarity on what the plan is going forward, what's the long-term vision, and how can we get there with current ownership, or what are different or new incentives that can be brought? Like, this is a Chicago landmark. How can we fully leverage adopt a landmark? How can we leverage Class L? So I just want to say when this ball gets rolling, it's really hand in hand with those local partners, Six Corners and Portage Park Chamber.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Frank, you just mentioned a couple of incentives that are specific to Chicago. Could you take a moment to, when you say adopt a landmark and Class L, what do you mean? And then are those the only incentives people can use? What are some other incentives people across the state could use as well?
Sure. Class L and adopt a landmark. I won't get into terrible specifics, but Class L is for commercial, industrial, or income-producing buildings. Basically, if you make a certain investment in a historic building, you can have your assessed level lowered for basically a period of 12 years. I think 10% for the first 10 years, and then a stair step back up. And then adopt a landmark. There's a fund through the neighborhood opportunity bonus system that pays into this fund, and designated Chicago landmarks or contributing buildings to districts can basically apply for funds for rehab projects throughout Chicago landmarks. But across the state, we have other incentives. We have the federal historic tax credit, where income producing buildings can get a 20% federal rehabilitation tax credit. And the one that Landmarks Illinois was the primary advocate of putting in place, we have our state historic tax credit, which is a competitive 25% tax credit. There's also other regional ones like the River Edge, which we had a hand in, that has done transformative work in Rockford and Peoria, and there's projects in East St. Louis and Elgin and Aurora. But we work pretty closely with our local partner to leverage the incentives that are specific to their area.
Great, Frank. And where can people find more information about those incentives?
I mean, the best place to go is find our website, landmarks.org. There's a wealth of resources there to help find funding for a project.
Great. Thank you. As you can tell, I give plants. So I just want to give us a pitch, everybody. Thank you. Your questions are coming in. We'll get to that. We have plenty of time for questions. So we're going to take it, take it slowly to make sure we answer them thoroughly, everybody. So thank you. We've got a couple of nice comments about great list. So to our advocacy team, to our communications team, excellent job on the list this year. So Eva, thank you for this question about Bishop Hill. So Quinn, this one is coming your way, as you have helped advocates all across the state with state historic sites. How will Landmarks Illinois influence motivate the state essentially to apply emergency repairs at Bishop Hill? So what will we do to encourage that?
Great question, and thank you for asking, Bonnie. So Bishop Hill,
Eva,
like the other,
thank you, Eva.
Eva, thank you. So Bishop Hill, like the other state historic sites across the state, they are absolutely central to Illinois' history, and then they tell a great story. And we know that, speaking with our friends over at IDNR, that they feel the same way. And so I think that there is a lot of opportunity here for collaboration as we move forward all across the state regarding the state historic sites. And so one of the things that IDNR has done is that they've advocated for some legislation that's currently in Springfield. And if adopted, the bill is actually SB 2976, if you're interested in looking. If adopted, this legislation would set the stage for conversations about the state historic sites moving forward. And so, Eva, to answer your question, I think that as the committee that IDNR is looking to form is created, these conversations around deferred maintenance, costs associated, interpretation, opportunities therein, that's where these conversations are going to happen. I don't think it's just about advocating strictly for Bishop Hill or Shawneetown Bank or Buell House. I mean, of course, we've included those three because they're the most need of maintenance, but it's more about having the larger conversation around state historic sites and how we're allocating resources equitably across the state. And so we're looking forward to that legislation passing. We're looking forward to that board being developed. And we're looking forward to having conversations with IDNR to better determine how we can help them identify the resources that are needed so that local officials and local advocates can see these really important places in their communities rehabilitated.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're getting great historic sites questions, but I'm going to give you a breather for a second, Quinn, and ask, trying to take these in order, everybody. Marshall asked a question. Does anybody, to Quinn and to Frank, because I don't know this building, do any of you know about Micro Industries, aka the International Harvester Rock Falls Works building? So excuse me, Marshall, I don't know that building. Quinn or Frank, do you know anything?
Yes, I'm a little familiar with it. I'm not sure of an update on it right now. I know that the the city of Rock Falls had a grant to demolish it, and that they were going through a SHPO review. Other than that, I'm not sure of any other updates, but I can absolutely reach out to you, Marshall, with any other information I can uncover regarding that
Great.
property.
Quinn, nice work. Thank you. Now you're going to encourage if anybody has a building across the state, this is like a quiz show for Quinn and Frank, everyone. Quinn, you did just mention the SHPO. Can you tell us, we're going to step back and make sure everybody knows the acronyms we're talking about. What's SHPO?
State Historic Preservation Office.
Great.
So those are our government partners here in the state of Illinois that work on a whole host of preservation related matters.
Thank you. All right, back to state historic sites, this time to Old Shawneetown Bank, Quinn. Great question here from Steve. Could the Shawneetown Bank still be used as a bank if restored, or is the only use allowed by IDNR as a museum?
That's a great question, Steve. I guess that would depend on whether or not there's a market there for it. I've had the opportunity to visit the bank. It's a remarkable structure. As Bonnie alluded to during her presentation, the exterior's had some work. It's in pretty decent shape. And the interior needs to be completely redone. So I think that if there was investment opportunity and the state looked at that as a possible option for the site, I don't know why that couldn't be contemplated. Again, I think that goes back to having these conversations with IDNR to talk about the future of all the sites. What is the future of the Shawneetown Bank? Should it be a bank? Is there a market for that? I don't know. Could it be a museum? Absolutely. In fact, given the way that it's structured, it could be a whole host of things. It could be an event venue. It could be a multi-use space. So I think that largely depends on the market and the local capacity and local interest in what it should be moving forward, and then conversations with IDNR as time goes on.
Great. Quinn, thank you so much. Frank, one toward you about the Sears Administration Building. And this is from Audrey Henderson, who is a member of the media. Audrey, thank you so much for covering these issues. Your question is the ownership of the Sears Administration Building in communication with community organizers in North Lawndale concerning possible development options? So are those owners talking with the community, Frank?
There's a lot going on, first of all, in North Lawndale with different rehab projects. So, I don't want to speak to the larger community necessarily, but I just want to say our local partners, as I referenced before, how much we work together with them. There's really the Foundation for Home and Square and the Friends of the Sears Sunken Gardens working specifically like on the Sears campus there. And really the focus of late has been what is the future, including future ownership of the building, because the building was put up for sale in 2023. I don't think there has been robust conversations, but that for sale opportunity kind of pointed us in the direction of somebody else is going to carry this over the hopeful finish line.
Frank, let's continue. Sears Administration Building came up again here from our partner at the Chicago Architecture Center, Cairo Dye. Hello, Cairo. Is the state of the Sears Administration Building safe for visitors, or does it need safety interventions to be occupied?
That's it's a great question. I don't know the exact state of it right now, of the interior. I mean, I know from that campus and from looking at the exterior, those things are built really, really, really solidly. But I would be, I don't know exactly what would be needed to have a certificate of occupancy at this point. That's something we often help with. We often, as part of a listing, can get an assessment on what the status is and what would be needed to really bring a building back up into a place where it could be occupied.
Great. Thank you so much, Frank. We know that Cairo works on the Open House Chicago, so maybe that's what she's thinking about, so we can all see it. Quinn, back to you. I just appreciate so much, everyone, that you care about our historic sites. This is indicative of that, since there are several questions. Quinn from Lois Kimmelman, our partner at History Cycle, does Governor Pritzker take an active interest in reviving this type of neglected historic building? Maybe that's general, maybe it's historic sites, but what have you seen from the governor?
It's a great question. I would say that in the interactions that I've had with him in Joliet specifically, he's expressed a deep interest in the preservation of our historic resources. I think that his budget reflects his deep care for historic resources across the state. As we've covered here, there's been deferred maintenance at the state historic sites specifically. That's what we're really looking at today from a state perspective. But we do want to commend the governor for enhancing budgets over the term of his administration. There's been many more resources that have been given to DNR for the purposes of rehabilitating some of the state historic sites. And really, even when we look at through the lens of other aspects of the state budget through tourism and talking about our cultural resources. Again, part of the issue that we've seen is prior administrations not investing appropriately. And so there's a catch-up situation that needs to take place. And I think that, the governor's budgets reflect definitely that he cares about historic and cultural resources. The question, of course, is that we just need more of them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And having just to say, if we get any questions about some of our past listings, the James R. Thompson Center just yesterday, Frank and I participated in essentially the groundbreaking for the start of the reuse of the James R. Thompson Center here in Chicago, one of our most endangered several times, and the governor was there to speak on behalf of the benefits of that project. So thank you, to that point, Quinn. So we have a question from Bill Garrett in Syracuse. Hello, Bill. Essentially Bill's saying here that he has a 5-unit apartment building that's historic and is trying to do needed repairs on it. The front and back porch are in need of repair, and it has been vacant for 20 years. Just looking, do either one of you want to give some idea of funding that might be available? And this is something we could reach out to Bill later. We could reach out to you as well.
Yeah, not to provide, get too in the weeds, but some of the initial questions are, it's an income producing building. So I'd point back to like the federal and state historic tax credits we talked about. Is it, is historic designated historic? What's the level of investment? These are all questions that will determine whether or not those programs would be appropriate. I also just want to give a shout out to, we mentioned the State Historic Preservation Office, but they administer the hundreds of millions to billions of dollars of investment that flows through Illinois because of those incentives. There were a number of years where Illinois was the #1 state in the country for investment with federal historic tax credit projects. So they're a great resource if you have a potential project for a federal historic tax credit project to ask as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Frank. Back to state historic sites, Quinn, a couple of items on Bishop Hill here, one from our partner Pam Owens at the Gaylord Building in Lockport. Quickly, let's see, Quinn, has the state considered divesting of any of the state historic sites to local groups or nonprofits in those in need of rehabilitation and stabilization?
So I really appreciate that question. I don't know that IDNR has had those conversations. Again, I think that this legislation that's in front of us is meant to facilitate those conversations, to look at the entire portfolio, examine what is in the portfolio, and perhaps more importantly, what's not in the portfolio for the state historic sites. And in those conversations, the hope would be that there's discussion around short-term fixes for some of these buildings, so i.e. addressing the deferred maintenance, but then long-term, do those buildings, those structures necessarily need to be state historic sites? And could they be disvested to a local group, or could there be a lease arrangement, a 99-year lease with a local organization? And so I think that the answer to that question could be site specific, meaning that each site could have its own answer. But I think writ large, the goal here is to have a conversation around the portfolio, the short-term needs for each site. And then ideally, IDNR will be able to save resources by working with a local group who then could take on interpretation and maintenance of those sites. And so I think, again, that depends on local capacity, local interest. The 3 sites we've identified today, we believe absolutely that there's local capacity and interest to do that, but we can't, nobody should ask those local groups to take on the deferred maintenance costs that already exist. So once the state's able to address that, then I believe that the local groups would be more than happy to engage in conversation with the state about how to maintain and interpret them moving forward.
And Quinn, excuse me if you mentioned, I just wanted to make sure that our constituents know about the new Illinois Historic Preservation Board created by legislation, or will be created by legislation. So do you want to briefly say that entity's role, because it might be confusing with our Illinois Historic Sites Advisory Council?
Yeah, so with the legislation that I referenced earlier, with passing that, that'll create what they're calling a state historic preservation board. And the board's role will be to look at the portfolio and to determine what should be listed, delisted, create specific designations and criteria. And so that goes back to this idea of examining the portfolio. And then from there, the board's job is to sort of advise DNR on what to do and how to do it in terms of deferred maintenance, interpretation, et cetera. And then I think that one of the things that it's really important that this board will have the opportunity to do is to look at the whole portfolio, to look at what DNR has been able to do with the resources they've been allocated, and then provide a report to the General Assembly. And so the reason why that is so important is because this is not a, hey, let's create this board, they're going to address it, and then we're going to forget about it. This is an opportunity to have continued dialogue year after year with the General Assembly about the needs of the state designated sites.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks, Quinn, for that. Frank, we have I think a great question just identifying some of the things we're mentioning. Kate had a question. We mentioned National Historic Landmarks. What is a National Historic Landmark? What does that mean?
That's a great question. Thank you, Kate, because it can be confusing. We have the National Register of Historic Places. We have National Historic Landmarks. Just to say, on National Register, which you often hear, that can have local significance. But when we talk about National Historic Landmarks, that's associated with a story that has importance to the whole country. So if I look at, the Sears Administration Building, that's the role of Sears, located here in Chicago, really affected everywhere across the country during its period of significance, from cities to, I know I have family that grew up on a farm that the Sears catalog was critical to. So just to give a little bit of data to back that up, when we look at Illinois, we have about 2,000 buildings on the National Register. That includes districts. So once you put those districts in, we have over 2,000 buildings on the National Register, but we only have 89 National Historic Landmarks. So that's really a much higher tier of significance.
Right. Thank you, Frank, for explaining that. So we're going to move. Really phenomenal question. Thanks from Elizabeth Blages, who is a member of our Preservation Issues Committee and a historical consultant with Preservation Futures. Quinn, this is, I think, right up your alley about logistics warehouses. So the question is about the reuse of the Libby McNeil Libby building. Sears Administration is that some of them, or many of them, have been eyed for larger logistics distribution warehouses. So Elizabeth's asking, have there been any discussions about trying to help them lead out with adaptive reuse or with design guidelines, incentives? Anything you'd like to contribute there? Quinn, I'm throwing that your way.
You want me to jump in, Quinn? I'm happy to, because I'm Sears and otherwise. I know I've been covering for Kendra too, with this ongoing conversation, these big ones. And just to say, like, when we're approaching some of these larger industrial uses, often it's how it's marketed as well. When we talk about the for sale process, about are we looking to wipe the earth clean and build a brand new thing, or find a potential reuse and look at what we already have? So I think there's always going to be conversations we're going to focus on like, if this needs a new use, and a lot of times these buildings need new uses. What are we talking about? Are we packaging these incentives and saying what the building could accommodate, or is the call for new uses just saying, here's a site, do what you want? So I think marrying those two, maybe it could be a fulfillment center of some sort, use the building as it is and adapt it.
Thanks. Frank, I'm going to stick with you for a moment here. We have time for perhaps, one or two questions, so we're going to choose these carefully. Number one, can you give us an update about the Damon silos? So we have a question. What's the latest?
Yeah, and I'm still getting totally up to speed with all of Kendra's work. She's got as you know, we got our hands in a lot of different projects, but I know Damon Silos, because of the Army Corps involvement there, was going through a Section 106 process, and it's just a federal review process when there is a federal undertaking. And there was an attempt to go for an expedited review process there. So we are participants in that, which hopefully, we can have a say in trying to prevent unneeded demolition of those silos.
Mm-hmm. And that question was from Steve Swenson. I wanted to say, Steve, we also are participating in a local festival. Frank, can you talk about that? Because this is a great way to get more information and come out to be with the local advocates.
I don't have the information right in front of me, but just to say, Bonnie, I actually have the information
June
close, but I
8th.
think
Yeah, I think it's
June 8th.
Saturday,
Thank you
June
for that.
8th. Mm-hmm.
And so we will be there. We will have we'll be there on Saturday, June 8th, I believe, and participating in trying to bring awareness and possible options for the Damon silos.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, I would like to thank Frank and Quinn. We have more comments, but we are running short on time. We have a couple of ending items that we want to tell you all about. So just want to say, if we didn't get to your question, which are wonderful, we're happy to reach out to you. We will, I believe, save the chat, and we can go back and answer some of these questions about the state historic sites. I know there's still concerns about how that funding is being allocated, where it's allocated. Some comments here about the rural communities, versus some of the larger communities. And I think some, continued ideas out there for us about, how we can be helping with this and engaging more people. So I just want to say thank you for those who have put questions in the chat, and we'll continue to answer them. You can also reach out to us after this. As you see, there's our website. So I am going to conclude at this point, everyone, so we can get you back on the rest of your day. So just once again, we encourage you to visit the website. You'll find quite a bit of information there if we didn't answer your questions. And also our contact information is on our website under the staff page as well. Also, please make sure that you are subscribed to our email blasts. It is free. You can do that at the bottom of our website. If you go to landmarks.org, scroll all the way to the bottom, you put your email address in, and you will get a monthly e-blast from us, which summarizes the very important and encouraging work happening all across the state with preservation. And to our advocacy team, you'll see the projects that they're working on as well, and subscribe to our social media channels at the same time. We would like to thank our local partners. What you see here is really not possible without them. So we want to thank our local advocates for partnering with Landmarks Illinois to help people save important places in their communities all across the state. You are on the front edge of doing this work, and we're proud to support you. If the advocacy work that you have seen today is important to you out there, please support Landmarks Illinois as well. We provide what you saw today all for free. We take thousands of calls every year and requests for assistance through our social media. So please, to help us assist our community members in these upwards of 150 places at any one time, we would like to ask for your support. So please become a member of Landmarks Illinois. You can do that again at our website. You can also make a one-time gift. You can become a monthly donor. You can do that using the donate button that we have on the website. And you can join as a member on the join button as well. Please make sure to check out our upcoming events. We have a number of ways that we bring our preservation community together virtually, like today, as well as in person. We are hosting our first Preservation Snapshots lecture on June 11th, featuring the history of Roberts Temple Church of God in Christ in Chicago. This Roberts Temple was the site of Emmett Till's open casket wake in 1955 that changed the course of history. So you're going to want to learn about that. As the also now part of a National Historical Park. We're also hosting an exciting summer networking event here in Chicago at the Salt Shed, one of the largest adaptive reuse projects in the state. The event is on Tuesday, June 25th, as you see here, so please join us. We would love to see you. We also have sponsorship opportunities available, so please come and talk to me if you are interested in supporting us as a corporation or even as an individual coming to underwrite some of our programs. Once again, we appreciate you joining us today for the 2024 Most Endangered Historic Places in Illinois. We encourage you to stay engaged, and we are deeply thankful to our preservation community for your advocacy and your work. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.